Some of you may have questions out there about the United States Army, so I offered up the question to fill in the blank, and I got some questions from the community to answer. Can I blank in the Army? And here are some of the questions to kind of cover to hopefully maybe give you some answers. Maybe you have the same questions. So let's dive into it. Let's start off answering some questions first from the YouTube community area. So this first one is, can I get on-post housing outside of the barracks if another soldier and I want to be roommates? On-post housing, no, but potentially off-post housing. The key thing with this is usually you have to get permission from leadership. Some people do it without getting permission from leadership, but it's usually advised that you do get permission from leadership first. On-post housing is strictly only available for like officers, higher ranking NCOs, or married couples, to have their families live on post. An option maybe to live off post and go and split the rent with a roommate might be an option to be able to do so. You still have to usually maintain a barracks room, so that way if there's things that come about, like there's like a mandatory cleaning of the barracks, you still have to participate in that. If there's some kind of room inspections or health and welfare going on, you still have to participate in that. But if you can afford it, you and another person, to go get an apartment off post and your leadership's okay with it, then sure. But just remember, there's still stipulations still kind of come about. If you're gonna go to the field, you gotta make sure, things are gonna get taken care of with the place, with the utilities, all that kind of stuff. So you gotta pay all that stuff. You're not gonna get BAH to be able to get help with that kind of a thing until you're actually like a married individual or other qualifications that qualify you to be able to have BAH. So if you're just a single soldier and you and a buddy make enough in base pay that you don't have enough bills, so you don't have a lot of bills that you have to worry about, then maybe you can split the rent. This next one is, can I rank up in the Army Reserves and how? Yeah, you can rank up in the Army Reserves. It's a little bit challenging in the reserves because it's all based on slots, where on active duty, if you are ranking up and there's not a slot for you at that rank, then they're just gonna send you to another unit, whether that's at the same installation or at another installation, and you get PCS orders to go some results because there's no more slots for you. In the reserves, a little bit challenging. If you wanna rank up, there has to be a slot for you. If there's not a slot for you, then sometimes that's when people end up changing MOSs, changing reserve units, all sorts of other things. So it's a little bit trickier in the Army Reserves, but you still have the basic same time requirements, and I've talked about that in a video in the past before, but in the reserves, there has to be a slot for you. If you're an 88 Mike and you want to go from E4 to E5, then there has to be an NCO slot for you at that unit. If there's not one, then you have to wait for someone to either get promoted so that you can take their slot, or they move on to somewhere else, they get out, whatever, or you got to reclass or change units or something. Next one is, can I start a business or a nonprofit charity in the United States Army? Yeah, you potentially could. I mean, there's going to be some, hurdles and some difficulties to doing that. You want to start a business, and if you're on active duty, well, you still have your active duty job. So you can't really make the excuse of, oh, sorry guys, I can't go to the field because my business that I started needs me, so I can't go. So there would still be some hurdles in there. Same with even if you're doing a nonprofit. So yeah, you could. You just have to be aware that, active duty Army is your primary job, and if the other side job, your business, your nonprofit charity thing or whatever, is going to get in the way with that, then the Army's going to probably start to have a problem with that. So the next one is talking about, can I compete in local jiu-jitsu or any local martial arts tournaments on my free time? Sure, maybe. The key thing with this is people are going to probably tell you to do it anyway, so just do it. If that's what you want to do, go do it. But it can become an issue if it's something like you're competing in these jiu-jitsu tournaments and you get injured and now you can't do your job in the Army, then the Army is going to probably have a problem with that. Your leadership's going to have a problem with that, because technically they even say that if you get like a severe sunburn and you can't do your job because of that sunburn, you can get Article 15 for that. I don't know if that's actually ever happened, but technically, based on the rules, that could happen. So it's possibly going to be something similar to this, where you're competing in this jiu-jitsu kind of tournament and someone got you an ankle lock, got you an arm bar, and now you get injured from it, and now you can't really do your job. You have to go to the medics, you have to get on profile, can't do PT for a while. Then if they really wanted to, they could choose to probably, give you an Article 15 for that and makes you do extra duty. There's all sorts of things that could come about. So it's usually best to clear with your leadership. Ask your leadership, hey, I want to compete in these jiu-jitsu tournaments. Is that cool? Is it okay? And maybe they'll be okay with it, maybe they won't be okay with it. But also a key thing too is there is a version of that with the Army, and it's a little bit more official. So you could do combatives. And so usually that requires you to be a certain level of combatives, but that could be a possibility. You could do combatives, which is jiu-jitsu or MMA basically, and you can compete in MMA tournaments, you compete in these combatives tournaments with the Army, and if you get injured during that, well, that's technically on the job. So it would be kind of covered and everything. So A little bit of gray area. Technically, yes, but you probably want to get permission from it because you get injured and it probably causes all sorts of problems possibly for you. One last one from the YouTube community, and that was, can I get fired from the Army? Kind of. It's not really getting fired, but you could possibly get kicked out of the Army, which is kind of the same thing. So not in the same way as you would think with like the civilian world, right? You can't get fired because, let's say on the civilian side, you were late to work a bunch of times and your employer got tired of that crap, so they fired you. Well, in the Army, if you're late a bunch of times, you're potentially going to end up with Article 15 and probably get reduced in rank, maybe just loss of pay, maybe some extra duty. It really depends on what the leadership wants to pursue with that, but they're not going to probably kick you out of the Army for that kind of a thing. If they're going to kick you out of the Army, kind of getting fired from the Army, I guess you could think of it, that's probably something a little bit more severe. Usually that's committing like felonies or something else, like maybe you came up hot for drugs, you got a DUI, certain other things that are probably pretty severe things. And if you get kicked out of the Army for those kinds of things, that's gonna look really bad in your record. There's other ways that you can get potentially, put out of the Army that's not as severe, if you got medically discharged and certain other things, but technically getting like fired in a comparison of the Army, you did something really bad and they're kicking your ass out of the Army. And that could end up in a dishonorable discharge, depending on the circumstance, could be an other than honorable discharge. There's all sorts of kind of scenarios as far as what type of discharge it could be, but usually you have to do something pretty severe for them to fire you or kick you out of the Army. I also asked the same question on Instagram to get some feedback from individuals that follow me on Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, go follow me, link down in the description box down below. But let's check out some of the questions that people had over on Instagram with this same, can I blank in the Army? This one is drill in any location for the reserves. Kind of, it is going to require probably some approval. You're going to have to, request from your current reserve unit. So there's a lot of steps in there. If, for example, you are currently stationed, let's say in Colorado, right? You have a reserve unit in Colorado, you live in Colorado, and you want to move to Texas. And so now you want to switch to that reserve unit over in Texas. Well, your current reserve unit has to be okay with losing you. So if you have a pretty important role, then that can cause some problems. The gaining unit has to have a slot for you. So let's say you're an E5, you're an E4 or whatever, then they have to have a spot for you to be able to go into that spot. So that's a little bit of a challenge as well. So there is a little bit of challenges, right? If you're in that scenario, you want to switch to another reserve unit, you got to put in the request through your unit. If they're okay with it, they approve it, then the other unit, gaining unit, has to have a spot for you for your MOS. If not, then you have to try to reclass or try to get promoted or a lot of other kind of scenarios, but potentially you could. I've actually known people that, started off in the reserves in, like, let's say Colorado, and then moved to Texas, and then they just travel up to Colorado to the reserve. And if the unit approves that, the unit does pay for your travel, but that could always change. There's always situations where funding is short and they don't have the funds to do that, and all of a sudden, boom, now you got to cover this out of your pocket. And it may go from one moment they are paying for your travel, for you to travel from, let's say in this example, Texas to Colorado due to drill, now all of a sudden they're not. Or if you want to do something where you want to try to change units to go drill in Texas because you're moving to Texas, then yeah, potentially, but like I said, there's a little bit of things with it, but you usually have to get permission from the current unit to be okay with them losing you, and then the gaining unit to make sure that they have a spot for you to fall in under. Can I get married to a foreigner in the United States Army? Yeah, I've known people that do that. I mean, there's probably some things that have to go along with it. You have to let probably your, leadership know that, hey, my spouse that I'm getting married to is not a U.S. citizen. If that's the case, I mean, if they're a U.S. citizen, then nobody cares, right? Even if they're from another country but they have U.S. citizenship, not a big deal. But if they don't have U.S. citizenship, then there is some potential security risks, making sure that this person is not trying to, trick you into this marriage so they can get secrets out of you or whatever. So there probably is some kind of security briefings you probably have to go through to tell your leadership, hey, my spouse that I'm getting married to is not a U.S. citizen, and they may have to do some certain things on their ends, maybe a background check, maybe all sorts of other things to make sure you're not being tricked into certain things. Technically, before you get married, you're supposed to contact your leadership to let them know anyways, because you're supposed to get like this little marriage counseling kind of a thing, not like a counseling like you go in front of a therapist, but like counseling as far as understanding, hey, here's your responsibilities now, because you're gonna be receiving BH and BAS and all those other things, and if you beat your wife, you're gonna be excluded from being able to be in the military because of this law, and you can't have a weapon now. So those kind of a counseling to sit down and let you know the different rules, that things change and things are a little bit different now. But probably, especially in that situation where if that spouse was not a U.S. citizen, then it can definitely complicate things and you have to let your leadership know. And I have known people that have kind of done this situation. There was an individual I knew that had got married to an individual from Korea. There was even one where it was an interpreter from Iraq, and they were not U.S. citizens, but they were in the process of going to, I think, get U.S. citizenship, but still nonetheless, they had to let the leadership know. This one is, can I bring my Xbox to my active duty station in the Army? Yeah, you can do that, especially if it's your active duty station. It's really only complicated when it comes to like basic, definitely not. AIT, maybe, depending on the AIT location, but when you go to your duty station, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a regular job. You're gonna have a place to live, either it's in the barracks, or if you're married, then it's off post and do whatever the hell you want. But living in the barracks, yeah, you can have a computer, you can have an Xbox, PlayStation, TV, guitar, whatever you want, as long as it fits in the barracks room and it's not illegal, then sure, of course you can have that kind of stuff. It's fairly open, you know, when you're in the barracks, as long as it's not illegal, you can pretty much have it in the barracks. So think of it that way. Active duty station, your actual duty station, you're done with all that initial training, you can have whatever you want in the barracks as long as it's legal. This one I know was meant to be a joke. It's actually from one of the moderators here on the YouTube channel and everything, but it was, can I skip PT in the United States Army? And even though I know it was a joke, there actually is ways that you possibly can. One way, obviously, if you're in the Reserves and National Guard, they don't really do organized PT, so you can always switch to the Reserves and National Guard. Another way is AGR. AGR a lot of times does not do like organized PT, they kind of do it on their own. So you're still kind of doing active duty type of job, but you're working with a reserve unit, full-time kind of a thing, but they usually don't do organized PT. And then in more rare cases, there are some units, I have actually talked to soldiers in certain units, where if you score X amount on the ACFT, the physical fitness test, then they allow you to do PT on your own. So you don't have to show up for a 6:30 PT. You show up for a 9 o'clock work call, and before that, you're supposed to do something on your own to stay in shape. Whether that's going to the gym in the morning or just waiting until the evening and sleeping in, that's really on you, as long as you maintain that score. So there are some units out there, which I think is a great gig if you can get one of those units, that allow you to do PT on your own if you score well enough on your physical fitness test. And then you don't have to do organized PT in the morning. You can just do PT in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, whenever you have the free time to be able to do so to maintain those standards. So try to get one of those units if you don't want to do organized PT anymore. Now, if you just don't want to do PT at all, well then like, get out of the Army, I guess. It's probably the only way. Outside of it, you're gonna have to do some form of PT, whether that's organized or on your own PT. Last one is, can I live in the barracks while married in the Army? No, that used to be a thing. There used to be this thing called Geographical bachelor, which would allow married soldiers to live in the barracks because their spouse was staying back in another state or back home or whatever, because they had a good job, they were going to college, whatever the standards were, whatever the reason was. And this would allow that soldier to still collect BAH and BAS, but live in the barracks. And then that BAH and BAS money could go to help the spouse pay for rent or mortgage or whatever back home. But that is no longer a thing. They got rid of that, I believe, maybe around 2013, 2014, I forget the exact year, but geographical bachelor situations is no longer a thing in the Army. So now, if you're in that situation, let's say you want to live in the barracks because you're married and your spouse is staying back somewhere else, not going to be allowed. You're still going to have to go get yourself an apartment, even if that means you're living in an apartment alone while your spouse lives somewhere else. Now you have to be able to make enough money to be able to pay for your rent, plus the rent possibly where your spouse is staying. Maybe they're working, maybe they're not working, but nonetheless, you will not receive anything extra because of your situation. It's still going to be the same as if you had your family there, compared to if you didn't have your family there. Can't live in the barracks, still got to go and get an off-post place or even get on-post housing, whatever you have available, but nonetheless, you will not be able allowed to live in the barracks anymore since they have done away with the geographical bachelor situations. So there you go. Hopefully maybe some of those questions maybe you had yourself, maybe you're kind of just curious about some things. If you have some questions outside of these ones, drop them down in the comment section down below. I want to hear some things. If maybe you want to know, can I blank in the United States Army? Then fill in the blank down in the comment section down below. Maybe I'll answer them in the comment section down below. Maybe some other individuals might answer your questions. Maybe I'll use them for another version of this video and we'll do this again. And maybe I'll offer it up for like Instagram and for the YouTube community post for you to fill in the blank on something like this or another kind of related question. So comment down below with any questions you have, maybe any kind of comments you have about situations I talked about here in this video. So comment down below. Now, I want your viewing experience to continue here at the Christopher Chaos channel, so I definitely recommend to check out this video right here. It's a great one. YouTube recommends it for you personally, so check it out. Why don't you? Check out my links down in the description box down below. Got some affiliate links that might give you some discounts on some great merchandise, or even my social media links for you to follow me on social media. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Christopher Chaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.